Today I'm starting a series of videos called Cooking with Scraps, where I'm going to share with you how I make use of those little bits and bobs of scraps in my fridge rather than throwing them out or putting them in the compost pile. Instead, I use them to make a whole meal so I have zero waste. And we're going to start first by going over some books that I've really used to find some inspiration to make these meals. Hi sweet friends, my name is Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest. This channel is all about living the simple life by cooking from scratch, making home remedies, and creating a cozy home with charming thrift store finds. So if you're like me and you like living the simple life, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the little notification bell that'll let you know every time I upload a new video. The first book that I want to share with you is titled Scraps, Peels, and Stems, Recipes and Tips for Rethinking Food Waste at Home by Jill Leitner. Now I wanted to show you, she has all her recipes outlined like this and broken down by category, which is very nice. She has breakfast, snacks, lunch and dinner, desserts, pantry, pickles and condiments, and drinks. Something that she has in here under drinks, which I really like, is a cute thing called ciderkin. And basically, she's using the peels and the cores to make almost like an apple tea. And I thought that was very nice and gives me some options because I often just use my apple scraps to make apple cider vinegar. But this is something new and different, and I look forward to trying that. I haven't tried that recipe yet, but I wanted to share that with you for those of you who enjoy making the homemade vinegar. This will give you another thing to do with those apple scraps. And another recipe that she had in here, which I thought was very interesting, it's under her section on cheese scraps. She makes a Parmesan broth. Now this I found fascinating because it can be common practice, you know, when you're making a nice Italian soup, if you have the rind of your Parmesan cheese, because that can be very expensive, Parmigiano Reggiano, we'll often throw in the rind into a soup, and it gives it some nice flavor, and if there are little bits still left on there, it puts some cheese into the soup, and it's very nice. But she makes a broth with cheese rinds, and it is delicious and is a wonderful soup base if you're short on chicken broth or chicken bone broth or beef bone broth, whatever the case may be. Making this broth from cheese rind scraps is very flavorful, and I highly recommend it. Another very, I think, very clever little dish that she has, which she calls omelet in a hole, which is a wonderful way to use up any kind of vegetable scraps that you have. And you'll just take, in here, I think she's using English muffins, but you can use toast. You know, it's also wonderful if you have a few pieces of stale bread or a stale muffin or a biscuit, or in this case an English muffin. You just use your biscuit cutter to cut out a hole in the middle, put your scraps in there, your chopped up vegetable scraps, and then throw in a little beaten egg and a little cheese, and you make her omelets in a hole. Very quick to come together, much shorter time than making a frittata or something like that. Plus you have that like little bit of crust almost, as though maybe like doing a quiche, because you'll toast that up, and it's a very clever recipe. So that's just a little sampling of what she's got in here, but I think that you'll really enjoy this book, and it'll give you a lot of clever ideas of how to use up some of your scraps. And the next book that I want to share with you is called Cooking with Scraps. Turn your peels, cores, rinds, and stems into delicious meals. 85 scrumptious recipes for zero waste cooking. And this is by Lindsay Jean Hard. And what I like about this book is she has hers organized, her table of contents is organized by type of food, which is just wonderful. So she starts with apples and then aquafaba. And if you're not familiar with aquafaba, what that is the water that's left in the can when you buy a can of beans. And it's kind of a little thick. Normally people will just, you know, put it down the drain as they're rinsing their beans, whatever the case may be. But if you take that aquafaba, you can whip it, you can make like a vegetarian based, or I guess even vegan based whipped cream, and so on and so forth. So, but she covers some on that. Apples, aquafaba, artichokes, asparagus, bacon, bananas, beets, and so bread, and just goes through everything. So you can, if you've got some scraps, you can just look, okay, what do I have? I've got cheese. I've got some little bits of leftover cheese. And she gives 4 recipes here on what you can do with it. And then she's got these cute little things that really jump out called Clean Out the Crisper. And then she's got tempura, crispy veggie tempura, Clean Out the Crisper strata, any seasoned strata, which is nice, you know. So whatever you have on hand, whatever in season, she's got those little special recipes that just jump right off the page for you. So I'm going to be making a leek and potato soup, and I'm going to have the leek greens on top left over. And she has a recipe in here which I thought was so clever, to shred your leek greens and make them in a pasta dish. So I'm going to do that, and once I have it all done, I'll put it in the iCards here so you can link to that and see how it turned out, and I'll let you know how it tastes. Now here's a picture of it right here. It looks quite delicious. I'm looking forward to giving that a try. Oh, and just going back to scraps, peels, and stems for a minute, I wanted to mention this is an oversized paperback, and this one, Cooking with Scraps, is a hardback. But getting back to some of the recipes that I just think are so wonderful, if you've ever made tabbouleh, which I love, which is with the cracked wheat, the bulgur wheat, and lots of parsley and tomatoes and onions, she has a parsley stem tabbouleh, because you are left over with all those stems. And so what she's done here is just to make the tabbouleh with the parsley stems, which I think is such a good idea. And then she's got, I grow a lot of herbs, as I like to make home remedies with herbs, and you often are left with a lot of stems. And I do some different things with them, but this is something I've never tried and I thought was so clever. Herb stem tahini dip dressing. I think that's going to be delightful. And this is another one that I thought was very clever. If you cook a lot of kale and you're left over with kale stems and you've ever wondered what to do with them, she does a kale stem hummus. I think that'll be very nice too, very tasty. And this is one of her Clean Out the Crisper recipes for quick pickles. And I like this one very much because although I like to do a lot of naturally fermented vegetables, sometimes if they're not at their prime, they're not always best to naturally ferment. It's often better if when they're very fresh, you get them and you come home and clean them up and ferment them, that they turn out the best. But sometimes I don't always get to everything right away. Maybe you can relate to that. And things might sit in my crisper a little longer than they should. And I like the idea of being able to clean out the crisper and just make a couple of quick pickles that are always enjoyable, although, don't have the all the good bacteria and whatnot of the naturally fermented ones. I still think that they're a good way to use up vegetables rather than discarding them. And also just making a nice little side dish that, because they are vinegar-based, do still help with digestion. And this one I found really clever. It's called cashew pulp tuna salad. And what she's done is saved the pulp from making cashew milk and actually mixed it in with some other very interesting ingredients too, like the brine from a bottle of Cornichon pickles and so on and so forth. And she just mixed that up and made a sort of a mock tuna salad just using the cashew pulp. And that really gave me some good ideas because I've not done a cashew milk, but I have done an almond milk from soaked almonds. And I always have all this pulp, and normally what I'll do is just put it into ice cube trays and freeze it into like the little cube size, and then maybe later on add them to smoothies or something like that. However, in the winter months, it's not getting used up because I'm not really making smoothies when it's cold. And I thought, boy, this is a clever idea. I'm going to try it with the almond pulp to make this sort of mock tuna salad. And I think it's going to be pretty flavorful. And after blanching tomatoes, if you've ever wondered what to do with all those tomato skins that you've peeled off your tomatoes, she has a great recipe here for tomato skin salt, where she basically just grinds up the tomato skins with some salt and makes this wonderful tomato skin salt that I'm looking forward to trying that this summer because I'm thinking that that's got to be awfully tasty. And this is another wonderful meal, either for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that I think would be just delightful to make up, called crispy breadcrumb fried eggs. And basically she's just taken some old stale bread, turned it into sort of very chunky crumbs, and sprinkled it on fried eggs. But it just seems so homey and tasty. And so I think that's very nice what she's done. So there's a lot of good things in here for you to look at that I think you'll enjoy. If you enjoyed hearing about these books on cooking with scraps, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I share about some helpful books when it comes to dehydrating foods, another way not to waste foods. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.